Yeah,
Okay, we're live.
like we can all do it too. So it's just at the top of the screen. I have the same option.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I would have also forgotten.
We're still 10 minutes out. I was gonna wait till 10 to remind ourselves, but early is fine.
Because, Jess, you read Jean's book, right?
Yeah.
So good.
I'm reading it right now.
It's so good.
I know.
That's my favorite kind of novel. like pain disguised as apathy.
Mhm.
Oh God, it's so brutal.
Yeah.
Did you watch the her New York Times Instagram live thing?
No, but I hope it's recorded, right? I think I can go back and watch it.
I'm not sure.
I had the craziest week.
As is her NPR interview. Like, hello. So
Amazing.
rad.
Hey, Joe.
Viva's doing a book club for her book.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's
Are you going to invite her to speak?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get her to come, but
That's awesome.
we'll see. She's super busy.
She might be in high demand right now.
Yeah. Did I tell you all? I went to her house to pick up a pizza because people have been like mailing her pizzas, like delivering pizzas to her houses. And she posted on Instagram. She was like, "I have like 5 pizzas. Does anyone want to drive over and get one?" And I was like, "I'll be there in 10 minutes."
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Where does she live?
Just northwest of downtown, like on the other side of the freeway from Chinatown. I don't know what that neighborhood's called.
West. Okay. Like not quite Koreatown, but
Like north of Koreatown, south of Dodger Stadium.
oh, Echo Park?
No.
Los Angeles.
It's like Los Angeles, yeah.
The city of Los Angeles.
It's like one of those like that spot there.
Yeah.
Historic Filipino.
Yeah, the names of neighborhoods in LA, like sometimes I see lists, I'm like, where is that? What, Jess?
Historic Filipino town.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like close to me.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
just south of you.
Hey JV,
I think.
can you hear us? Maybe not.
Rocket can hear us.
Yes.
Kitty.
Bury my tea.
How old is he?
I think maybe 8. About 8.
Oh. So cute.
Not a kitten then.
Mm-mm. No, I know. Like I purposely got an older cat. He was 5 when I got him, and I was just like, all right, I don't want a kitten that's gonna be like, oh shit, he's sitting on the keyboard and doing things to the agenda. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, like I wanted like a quiet cat that would just, like come out when I like occasionally, but like a cat, not a dog, a cat. And he's more like a dog.
He's adorable though.
Rocket, your little eyes are so close together.
Yeah, he's a little cross-eyed.
Little Siamese.
Yeah. Technically he's a lynx point Siamese, I think. Oh, Jesus.
Cat.
Yeah, which Siamese cats are always supposed to be more vocal too, and I didn't know that he was part Siamese until after I got him. And I was like, oh yes, he does meow all of the time.
I have a calico, and they're also known for being very vocal.
I have a jerk. I don't know what she's known for.
She's known for not letting Sonia get past her. I remember that.
Yeah, I think she was angry because you were there. We got her essentially like kitty Xanax, sort of, so that when we have lots of people at our house, we're supposed to drug her so she gets used to it and isn't afraid of everyone.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Oh. Can cats take Benadryl?
I don't know.
You can do that with dogs. You just give them half a Benadryl and they'll just like, it's
Oh
basically
yeah, like a
their little
people
brains.
Benadryl.
Isn't that what
Little
catnip's for?
sedative.
No, catnip's the opposite.
Catnip makes them like batshit.
It's cat cocaine.
Yeah.
Kevin has a catnip banana that like she just sits there and licks. Which is really weird now that I say that out loud.
Nasty.
Don't worry, it's recorded for our entire community to listen back on repeat.
Oh dear.
JV, you taking a screenshot for one of your 100 headshots? Maybe not.
Oh, no, you're still on mute.
I can unmute him.
Bam. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yay.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I'm actually working on it on another screen. That's why I was not paying attention. It's been a stern taskmaster, I'll tell you that. It's been hours a day, every day for 100 days, but it's been very good and focusing. Helped me get me through. There's an expression you youngsters might not remember from hippie times. The expression was, dope will get you through times of no money better than money will get you through times of no dope. Work will get you through times of no ultimate better than ultimate will get you through times of no work, or the other way around. I'm not sure which. I just know no ultimate. And that's sad. Is anybody playing?
Reading a puppy.
Not here.
Orange County people I've seen have some pickups, but that's the only thing I've seen, and I don't know if that's the right decision.
Yeah, I can't make that decision yet.
Oh, you mean because cases are spiking in more than half the states, including California?
I boil it down to two words. Whoa, Nelly.
I boil it down to two words: Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that the positivity rate in Imperial County this week was 27%? 1 in 4 tests were coming back positive, which is
County?
fucking Imperial County. It's just east of San Diego, along the border.
But that also includes this, what CDC said yesterday about the fact that there's actually 10 times as many people with false negatives, or that either haven't been tested or with false negatives, which means that, which ultimately negates the previous thought that asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people were like fewer and farther between, right?
The estimation yesterday by Fauci was that up to 40% of people are asymptomatic, like who could have the virus.
But not pre-symptomatic. Like they have the virus and will never have symptoms.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Asymptomatic, yeah. Although I don't know if they distinguish between asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic in that statistic.
Yeah, I was having that conversation the other day with someone about like what gets qualified, because they were saying that like asymptomatic people don't seem to be transmitting it as much, but then there's also like the fact that they are, like, people are getting it. So it was like, I don't understand how to rectify those, and that's where I thought maybe pre-symptomatic versus asymptomatic was where you needed the designation.
Well, yeah, but they also this week also refined their statement that asymptomatic people have as much viral load as people showing symptoms. So they are just as contagious.
Yeah.
And I bet if they're asymptomatic, they're more inclined to take chances and risks. And in California, what they're saying is really causing increased cases is the small, like, family and neighborhood gathering.
Uh-huh.
And like, I mean, I get it. If one hasn't been sick and you live near a family member, you're not going to wear a mask at dinner. Like,
yeah,
that makes sense. It's just not safe.
Yeah, Chris and I have gone to see his family, but we all sit outside on a roof deck, way more than 6 feet apart, still wearing our masks. We made the concession the other day to not wear a mask, but we were definitely like at least 15 feet from each cluster of family members and like weren't near each other.
I mean, just be careful. I really think
yeah.
that that's the kind of thing, those like concessions without a mask and we're far, but like we just don't know enough about it.
Well, Fauci said yesterday too that in his like 4 decades of infectious disease experience that he's never seen a virus like COVID, and it doesn't have all the typical characteristics of infectious diseases. And they literally like don't know why it's acting the way it is, which
With regards to spread.
yeah. So like all the traditional tools for tracing, tracking, testing, all of that that they use for infectious diseases are just not like it's not working the same way that traditionally has.
You all know a bit about my grandmother now. She worked for Dr. Fauci at NIH for many like decades back in the 80s and 90s.
That's rad.
Apparently, he was a hottie back in the day.
I think he's still.
Well, but he was voted
Handsome
like
man.
sexiest man alive some year.
I think he still got it.
Can somebody please find that and set?
School.
Can somebody find that and share a picture, please?
It's gonna be him with a mask on and
Dr.
a back.
Hey y'all, morning.
Morning.
Hey.
Morning.
Oh hey Caitlin, what's up?
Hello, everyone. Surprise.
Yeah, how was your Hats, Hops, and Hawks virtual meeting?
It's good. We only had one person who was upset that we weren't doing anything in person, so I think that's a success.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. At the brought in, we have talked about doing some sort of additional town hall, similar in structure to this. So that's why I wanted to jump in and see, instead of working separately, everyone should work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome. We miss you.
I can send you our agenda if you want to see.
Oh, thank you, Lorraine.
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea, can we get a puppy sighting, please?
She's eaten.
Oh, okay. All in good time then. All in good time.
Oh, we got one from Box.
Yeah, he's.
Oh.
Andrew.
You guys are like my parents who, no matter what Zoom they're on, always join from their own device.
I know. Well, last night when Chris and Joanna were together, it was really awkward. I
was just thinking that. I was like, that's probably a first in a while for you guys to be in the same room.
What? You're dating?
No.
I was like, how long have I been gone?
Into the God.
Let's wait. We'll wait a few more minutes.
Yeah, we don't have consent Korean yet also.
Let's do that.
Somebody want to post on the Facebook event and just say it's starting now? Repost the link.
Lauren just posted it
Cool.
like
Sorry.
20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. I don't check Facebook very much, so.
Yeah, now I have it open just in case anybody asks about it.
For our older demographic, like me.
It still uses Facebook, you mean?
Yeah. I don't actually, but morning, everyone. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes to get started.
Share your cats, dogs, mugs.
I just got him to leave me alone.
Fair.
I say, it's not a cat, but I bought myself a baby watermelon.
What's keeping her company through quarantine?
The only time I've ever seen Buster's cat not hiding under the bed.
Hey.
Oh, kitty.
Oh.
The biggest cat with the tiniest voice.
My dad was cat sitting for someone, and I would call him, and it sounded like there was like a duck in the background. And it was this like 18-year-old cat that had like the oddest meow. It sounded like it had been smoking for its whole 18 years. Like, it's just like, what is wrong with that thing?
Oh.
Oh, Jesus.
Lauren, do you think I should reach out to Kunsa and Kareen?
I mean, they both replied last night and said they would be on, so.
Okay.
We gotta. Oh, Nahal. We don't see your kitty very often.
She was meowing from the corner of the room.
Oh.
I sent Nahal an article or like a thing on Facebook the other day I saw that said cats can't catch COVID or can't spread COVID, but they would if they could. Like,
I believe that.
Totally.
I heard that COVID was just a dog plot to get everybody to stay home with their dogs all day, every day.
It's working.
Seems logical. Nice work, dogs.
Yeah, I think my neighbors either got like, I don't know if they're just fostering this dog during quarantine or if they got a new puppy, but he barks all of the time, and all I hear is like, oh, good boy, good boy. Like, there's a lot of praising, so I assume that he's new. Just like, or yelling when he's barking, but I'm just like, this is
Morning,
fun
Green.
now that I'm home all the time.
Morning. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Green.
Yeah, we did this discussion, like we have a grateful thread in one of our team chats. And one of them I thought of was like, what's a discovery you've had during quarantine? And almost 50% of them were like neighborly pets that now we get to hang out with. So there's a cat in our neighborhood that is super friendly and will actually come to you if you hear his bell and then go call him. So it's like we have a cat, but zero responsibility.
That's kind. All right, y'all, it's almost 10 after the hour. So out of respect for everyone who's shown up at this point, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So Chrissy is actually going to kick us off this morning.
Yes. All right. So to get us started, we'd like to acknowledge that the land we inhabit today was once known as Tavangar. It was home of the Gabrielino Tongva people, the original stewards and caretakers of this land before we came to live here. They were first colonized by Spain in the 1700s, and then by Mexico in the 1800s, and then by the United States when we declared war on Mexico in 1846. We'd like to acknowledge that this land here was taken as a result of forcible removal by the Tongva people. And if you'd like to learn more about native lands or see any other land designations, you can go to this link here that I'm gonna send in the chat. Maybe not. It's native-land.ca. I will try it again, but my cat's also sitting on my keyboard, so he might be messing things up. There we go. Cool.
Awesome.
Right.
Thanks, Laura. Just in case people don't know us, the board is kind of hosting this. Obviously, a lot of you probably know most of us. I'm just gonna say the board members' names who are here, and when I say your name, just raise your hand so people can see who you are. So today we have Lauren with us. Hi, Lauren. We have Rami with us. Amy. We have Jess with us. Hi, Jess. We have Jackson with us. Jackson. We have Christy, who just read the agreement. We got Grant doing his mug thing. We got Joanna. We got Nahal. And we got me. And I think that's everyone here. Sonia is not here right now. She's on the board also. But yeah, that's us. We're not going to do like a big introduction. You know who we are, mostly. And if you don't, that's who we are, us. Rami, take it away.
I think it's, yeah.
Oh,
hey,
Lauren, sorry.
Good morning,
I can't
everyone.
read the agenda.
That's okay. It's Saturday morning. We're all here doing our best. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our consulting partners in this election process this year with the board, the organization Both And, formerly known as Kadu Consulting, who's done some work with LAOUT. They ran our large community equity event a few years ago, and have just been really incredible partners with us for the last couple of years. So Corrine is one of the co-directors of Both And. They are on the call with us, and I just wanted to acknowledge the work that we're doing with them in the space of helping us make our LAOUT community more equitable for everybody. And specifically, they are working with us on the election process, and then we'll be helping to do some training with the new board. Corrine, did you want to say good morning or say anything?
No, that was it. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that introduction. I am here as a participant and also observer during the town hall. And tomorrow, Kunsa and I will be hosting the BIPOC town hall as well. And I might lose service for a few minutes later, but we'll pop back on as soon as I'm able to. So thankful to be here with y'all, and thank you so much for creating this space.
Thanks, Corrine. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Rami to get us kicked off and overview kind of why we're here today.
You're muted, Rami.
Fundamentally, we just wanted to really acknowledge that LAOUT, we haven't been part of any solutions or meaningful responses to the sort of anti-Blackness, Black Lives Matters movement. And as community members and obviously human beings, we feel that there's an education responsibility here. We also feel compelled to mobilize and organize. So obviously, hopefully no one's playing Frisbee right now. And so we sort of thought, we can take that time that we might've been on the field, not in 2020, and put it to better use. So that's what this town hall is really about. It's part of that process. We want to acknowledge that we're really in a process of growth. We've learned a lot. We have to unlearn some things, and we just wanted you to know that your board really values you, the LAOUT community, and our larger LA community, and that's why we're here. So yeah, Lauren, back to you, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're just gonna have quickly, for those of you who have participated in some of our equity meetings over the last couple of years, we have a community of practice or just some guides for how we want to spend our time together today. So each of us as board members are going to mention one way of being together, and just give a little context for it. So Creamer's going to start with our first community of practice this morning.
Okay, so the first guideline is speak from your own experience. So this means that when you want to share your thoughts or your feelings, use I statements, I think, I feel. In the event of disagreements, ask the other person to clarify. Don't put words in anyone else's mouth. And then Jackson's next.
So we also want to challenge our comfort zones. It's easy to sit back and just listen and not participate in discussions that might be difficult, but you'll get a lot more out of it, or at least we think you'll get a lot more out of it if you actively participate, even if it is uncomfortable for you.
The next one is raise up, and it's basically, you might have heard this as step forward, step back. The idea is that we want you to raise up, like Jackson was saying, in terms of like stepping into a conversation, but also acknowledging that if you're that person who typically leads the discussion or starts the discussion, maybe dominates the discussion, raise the other people in the conversation up by stepping back and letting them speak first, making your voice last. And shooting it over to Lauren.
So we want to assume good intent and take care of impact. And I think this one is pretty self-explanatory, but the impact piece is particularly important because often if somebody is hurt or offended by something I've said, I may not understand that impact or even be able to empathize with it. But that's something that we want to pay attention to and understand that even with good intent, sometimes the impact on other folks can be felt negatively. And that impact is the important piece to take care of and to pay attention to. And I'm going to kick it over to Nahal.
Respond with curiosity. So if someone is stating their opinion on something and you disagree, maybe you can ask questions to further understand why they believe something and just try to understand their opinion more rather than just following up with what you think and combating what their opinions are. And Raimi.
Interrupt for justice, which is if you feel someone's being unjust or not respectful, somebody says something that's sexist or racist or the sort of implication is such, then anyone can jump in and sort of like politely pause the conversation and ask that we reevaluate what language we're using. Next is Chris.
Yeah, so non-closure basically just means that we should be comfortable not having closure when we come out of a meeting like this. The point of discussions like this isn't to be like, all right, we're done, we did it, good job. It's to just start discussions or continue discussions, and not having closure can be a challenge for people, but we want to acknowledge that it's okay, and you shouldn't have closure by the time we're done with this, and things are always ongoing. Next is Joanna.
So mine is what's learned leaves, specifics stay, and then we ask permission to share stories. So meaning the big points of this and the lessons that we learned and ideas that we generate together are what is important and can come out of here and continue conversations. But if someone shares a specific story about what's going on, that maybe those details were meant to be shared here in this specific context and don't need to be repeated and taken out of context outside of the conversation. And in the same vein, if you're going to share a story that's not your own, make sure that it's okay with who you're sharing, whose story it is that you're sharing. It's okay to share the people's story if they think that you can tell it okay for them, but also we want to make sure that they're okay with that before just jumping in and saying like a story about someone else. And last but not least, we have Christie's.
So I have make it plain, which just means to break it down, use simple language and background information if you need anything. And you can ask clarification questions, but we just want to keep things super clear and easy to understand. And logistics.
So I'm actually going to post those in the chat right now so you can see them throughout the time together. And just kind of going over basic logistics, we're going to use the chat box as a way for you all to communicate with all of us as board members, as co-hosts of the town hall. So please feel free at any time. If you have questions, you can always type it in the chat. The other way to get our attention, especially when we open it up for discussion, is if you go to the participants logo at the bottom and click on that. At the bottom of there, you should have a cue to be able to raise your hand. And that way we will be monitoring both the chat box and the participant section so that if you raise your hand, we'll know kind of who to call on. And then you have the power to unmute yourselves. So you can, you have the power. You can do that for yourselves. Okay, so I think those were the only logistics I was meant to go over. Okay. So we're just gonna quickly transition into, again, like why we're here, what we're acknowledging today as far as the state of the world, and then use that as a jumping off point for a discussion. So Christy's gonna start.
Yes, so we wanted to help frame our discussions today by acknowledging the movement for Black lives and the murdering of people by law enforcement, especially and including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Rayshard Brooks. The list is too long to name everyone, but it also goes beyond just police killings. And I wanted to put a little bit more of a local lens on it into like the LA system. Something that I just learned recently is that Los Angeles County has the world's largest jail system with an average of 17,000 inmates. Like the world's largest jail system. Black people make up 35% of Los Angeles County prison, while they account for just 11 people of Los Angeles County's general population, 11% of Los Angeles County's general population. And 53% of the prisoners are pre-trial, which means that they haven't actually even been convicted of anything, and they're likely just stuck there because they can't afford bail. There's way more framing that could go into that, but I just wanted to set a tone and allow everybody to understand where we're coming from here. Our next, and then another framing point, since there's so much going on right now, was COVID, which Lauren's going to cover.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, so obviously, as we all know, we're on this Zoom meeting because we can't be in person right now. We're not playing Ultimate. There's no programming going on. And that is all due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which unfortunately just this week has reached record levels in the US. So to me right now, it feels like there's sort of a disconnect between what we're doing socially in reopening restaurants here in LA and being able to go back to the gym and things like that, and the severity of the pandemic compared to where we were a couple months ago when we first started canceling programming, when everything was locked down. We were worried about the pandemic, but the levels now are so much higher. In Los Angeles County, Latinx people account for 50% of the infections and 40% of the death rate. And these numbers are updated daily, and Black people account for 9% of the people dying from COVID, which is higher than their infection rate at 4%. So we know that the disease is disproportionately impacting people of color in Los Angeles County and throughout the United States. And it is Dr. Fauci at the White House, who's the NIH director, said just yesterday that the virus is unlike anything he's ever seen in his 4 decades of infectious disease experience. And so there's still not a good even understanding of how contagious it is and how it's spread precisely. And so there's just so much that's unknown in being close to people. So LAOUT, stands by our decision to cancel all programming, knowing that Ultimate is a sport in which we are close to people physically and breathing heavily as we work out. And that programming will remain canceled into the future until we are given some indication from the state that something is safe to restart again. So we, as I mentioned earlier with our work with Both And, we are, the board is really invested in making our community, and particularly the leadership of our community, a more equitable space for everybody, particularly uplifting Black, Indigenous, people of color, in order to lead Ultimate and ideally to reflect better the community in which we live here in Los Angeles. So we would like to open it up for discussion, and in considering what Christy said with the movement for Black Lives, our current state of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and just like how we show up as a community as activists, we want to hear from you. Like, how do we show up as an activist community, as people who are invested in the community in which we live, in being able to go to parks and be in social interactions with each other. So at this point, if you could, from your participant panel, if you could raise your hand and we can kind of call on people so that it's not too much mayhem. We'd love to hear from you about ways in which you think that LAOUT as a community can show up, can be active, and especially right now, considering we can't be outside playing together. Yeah, JB, go ahead.
More of an observation on this moment here where we're all kind of in silence waiting for somebody else to talk. I think we all share the same reticence to, I don't know, find a way into this conversation. I have one observation and one question. Maybe you can help me with the answer to the question. First observation is, we meeting here today are not a diverse group, which says something about the organization as a whole. And the question concerns the BIPIC, if I have that right, the second seminar that's happening. Is that exclusively for people of color, or is that open to the public as well?
Yeah, so to answer your question about the town hall tomorrow, it is exclusively for Black, Indigenous people of color, because it is meant to be a space that is safe from, there is no space safe from whiteness, so I hesitate to say that. But as a separate space, it's going to be led by Karine and Kunza of Both and it's, yeah, the conversation is meant to be a space without white people specifically.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Just to kind of comment on what you said too about our community, I think the board certainly recognizes the lack of diversity within the board, and it's something we've been trying to change actively for quite a while, but also within the community, and that's something we've had a lot of discussion about. And you know, we would love to hear other ideas and feedback on how to get the LAOUT community looking more like Los Angeles in terms of who's playing with us and who's involved and who's included, because I think it's a real challenge, and it requires more than just a volunteer board of people. It requires our whole LAOUT community.
I'm also curious to know who, if any among us, participated in the street demonstrations in the last few weeks, and what your thought process was regarding balancing responsibility to the Black Lives Matter movement versus your responsibility to your personal health and the health of those around you. Any thoughts on that? Let me offer mine by saying...
Don has his hand raised, and Kelsey. JV, if you want to continue first.
I'm sorry?
You want to continue?
I just, as someone who turns 65 this year, it's easy for me to hide behind, I'm an endangered category. And so that makes my decision not to be on the street pretty cut and dried. My sense of, if you can think of it as a seesaw, my sense of responsibility to myself and my spouse, who's also older, makes that decision pretty clear for me. But for those of you who are younger or not with people who are in endangered categories, how do you navigate that space? How did you navigate that space?
John?
So I've participated in a couple demonstrations, and I mean, just being mindful of everyone else's space, and just I know I've been trying my best to distance myself from other people, but I feel like it was something that I needed to be a part of, and just to see the vast numbers of the people that came out was just powerful in itself. But I think it's safer than going out to beaches and to try to live your life a little more with normalcy. I think going out to these demonstrations, you're not like going up to people and hugging them, or you're still keeping your space and watching and listening primarily when you're there. But another comment of maybe how LAOUT can get, I guess, more involved or get their, to show their support is maybe sending out emails to the entire community of how they can get involved virtually. If you want to continue to, push this thought of staying home and staying away from other people to spread the virus, but at the same time, helping the movements that are happening currently. And that could be just providing emails to people of power in the LA community, and into what respect we should be contacting them in. And also providing maybe Instagrams, Facebook groups that they can get more informed, or places where they can get the correct information from rising the voices of Black people in America. And so they can have spaces of where they can listen to those voices that they should be listening to.
Thank you, John.
You know, Kelsey, I don't know if you had raised your hand and wanted to still say something.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I was just responding to John's question about managing going out and supporting in the protests and the marches versus your own personal health. And for me, I felt that taking precautions, wearing a mask, trying to remain distant, I was willing to accept the risk of getting the virus and quarantining myself to fight something that is racism that has killed more people over many, many, many more years than this instance of the outbreak. So it was kind of for me to take a step back and realize that, like, yeah, the moment that we live in is really scary for a lot of our personal health, but it's been really scary for the personal health of people of color for a long time. And I can sacrifice a little bit of my safety to try and show up and be visibly in support to create more safety for people of color.
Thanks, Kelsey. Drea, did you have anything you wanted to say? I saw you had a hand up too.
So just when I went to a protest, I just probably quarantined for like a week and then went to get a COVID test. They're free and easy to sign up for. And so that's how I navigated that. You know, obviously I took a risk with my own health, but I also interact with other people. And so that's has been my experience. I haven't gone to another one, but also at the time that they were happening, it was a little bit less, we weren't at a spike as we are now, right? So I think in the current environment, maybe I would be more hesitant, but at the time it seemed, you know, I could absorb the risk or accept the risks I was taking.
Who else? Suggestions for how we as a community can show up in activism right now? Yeah, Drea, go ahead.
Sure.
So there was a Ultimate Frisbee reading book club or something. We're reading White Fragility right now. We're in the second week. I've seen Raimi's name on there in the sign up sheet. Pinky's on there. I haven't seen any other names. That's maybe, I don't know if it's just people didn't see it, or can't even recall how I like stumbled upon it. It's ultimate, it's with a focus on ultimate, I think, and how we see it in our community. And I found it very helpful in some of the situations where it's, I think we're in a place where we're acknowledging that even though we're not racist, we do have certain situations where there's bias, right? And people of color or Black people, Indigenous people experience the situation differently than white people or people who are passing as white, right? I don't know. Sorry.
I think we've got a little bit of background noise, maybe.
But anyway, so I thought that was an interesting thing that people of in the Ulta community that I've seen.
I mean, I think it's worth asking a question now then that we were planning on asking a little later, which is, Drea, to your point, I am in that anti-racist book club, and it's been incredible. And I think they've organized it really nicely. The woman is an educator, the woman who's organized it. So we are wondering, I think, if that's something that our layout community would like. White Fragility is written by a white woman, which I think, there's an effort to really uplift and participate in reading books written by Black people and also people of color right now. And White Fragility is a sort of incredible experience. And I would even say, in response to what Drea just said, I mean, for me, it has given me the tools to realize that I am racist. I am upholding white supremacy in ways that I hadn't realized. So I highly recommend that. And then, if our community is interested in that, I will organize a book club. We can meet via Zoom, and certainly don't have to read White Fragility, but I think that's one action item we could maybe take if people are interested.
There's on the bottom of your screen, you should see a little icon for reactions. Can you give a thumbs up if either the book club or Dawn's suggestion for sending out emails about how to get involved and how to stay active, if either of those things would be of interest to you coming from other folks at Layout?
Ooh, lots of thumbs up.
Yeah. Nice. All right.
Yeah, I think just Hoover. Sorry, I totally did not use the hands up. I apologize.
That's okay. Go for it.
I'm so sorry for whoever was raising their hand. Yeah, I think like to Don's point and Rainey's point, I think just like, and I think Drea mentioned like she doesn't know how she really came across that book club. And I think there's a lot of information being circulated from different platforms, whether it be Facebook or, internal groups that people are involved in and group meets. And I think it'll be very beneficial if Layout or someone could like take all that information and put it in a nice email format that we could get once a week that's saying, hey, these are the few things that people have seen that people could kind of join. Because I think you're right. I think I've seen something on Facebook, but it really gets lost and it's kind of hard to juggle all the different informations out there. And I think getting it from Layout, I would trust it more and know that it could be beneficial for me in terms of learning and, having that conversation with other people.
Great. Thank you, Hoover.
Joe has his hand up.
Joe?
Bodman?
Hey, yeah, I wanted to echo Don's idea. I love the idea of sending out resources to the community. I also think it could be cool if, you know, I would be really excited to see LAOUT kind of picking some organizations. And I think, you know, on a practical level, maybe a smaller number of organizations is more realistic, but to be echoing frequently, there are a lot of organizations putting out, you know, like frequent calls for action and offering different levels of participation too. So I've seen a lot of organizations, you know, putting calls out for in-person protests, virtual events, educational events, as well as actions like emailing a politician or something like that. So I think it would be, you know, I'd be excited to see LAOUT, you know, finding some of those organizations and just like continuing to echo whatever call they're putting out. Thanks.
Yeah.
Avalon has her hand up.
Avalon, go ahead.
Hey folks, I was just gonna plug with local orgs, and I don't know how LAOUT would want to get involved in amplifying those messages, but people have probably seen a lot about People's Budget LA and the actions right now about defunding the LAPD. And even if you're not in LA County, like right now I'm staying at my grandparents in Whittier, but there's movements in Whittier to defund the Whittier sheriffs. So there's a lot of movement and actions around local politics, and especially like with the LA school board, like you can get involved with emailing your board member. But I was just gonna plug People's Budget LA as an org that's doing like a ton of work right now. I don't want to like belabor the point, but like over 50% of the LA budget goes to the police, and Garcetti said like, I want to lower it by 150 million, which like sounds like a win, but when you get 3 billion, it's not really. And I feel like that intersects with Ultimate, especially because the budget can then be used for things like parks and access and things that if people have those, then hopefully they can play more Ultimate.
Yes. Thank you, Avalon.
Yeah, I just dropped a link to that site in the chat if anybody wants to go take a look at it. JV, I saw you had your hand up earlier too.
Yeah, I on a personal level, I did a thought experiment. I probably saw it on Facebook, but it was real enlightening for me. Seems like a part of the problem is that we try to be empathetic to the Black experience, but we don't unpack the assumptions of our own behavior that surround our empathy. So we end up with a kind of an I-thou empathy rather than an I empathy, if you understand what I mean. The thought experiment was this: take your normal walk in the world as if you were Black, as if everyone you saw had the natural bent of fearing you or suspecting you or wondering what you were doing there, and see how it feels. And I did it, and of course it felt really awkward and horrible. But the thing that struck me was it stripped me of my best means of social interaction, which is a friendly greeting and a smile, eye contact. When you have the assumption that the people you're attempting to make contact with are adversarial to you by nature, it immediately forecloses the desire, I think even the ability to reach out to other people. I found that really staggering. It was hard to maintain that mindset, and the more I stayed in it, the less happy I became. So just in the nature of walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, maybe make the decision to be in those shoes and take that walk and see how it feels. That's all.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly summarize. It sounds like folks are active and have some really great suggestions. So we have this Zoom is being recorded, by the way. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, but We also are taking notes, and we'll likely reach out to some of y'all. But I would say, if anybody is specifically interested in helping the board with some of this communication on a regular basis, either contributing to it one time or many times, we would love that. The idea of this town hall really came out of a desire for more community participation in this space specifically. So let us know. And we are going to now transition to a discussion about the elections, which Jackson's going to kick off for us.
So hopefully everyone here has gotten the initial surveys for the elections we're planning on holding. Originally, we were hoping to hold them earlier, but obviously we wanted to talk to the community at large because, as we know from this town hall, there's a lot going on between COVID and the murder of Black people by police. So there's going to be at least 5 positions on the board open this year. There's some of us who are in the middle of a 2-year term, and those who have previously served 2-year terms will need up for re-election. So we want to talk about that. Are you interested? Do we want to push this off a little bit later? Do you think it's an appropriate time? What can we do to reach out to people who are interested, might be interested in running for the board, to help make the board look a little bit more like LA at large? Floor is open.
Just to sort of frame that a little bit, obviously y'all can contact the board directly. Christy had just put the email address in the chat, our email address in the chat, so that will reach us if you're interested in running, engaging in the process in any capacity. And to Jackson's point, we do want to speak about that here. Historically, the LAOUT board had been Andy, basically, as most people on here know, and he did a phenomenal job. And he did that for a long time. And so you may or may not be familiar with how this iteration of the board came to be, but I think historically we perceived the responsibility as that of programming, right? We're here, tangentially connected to the club scene in Los Angeles, but predominantly focused on providing opportunity for league play and some facilitation of pickup possibly. What has transpired over the last year to 3 is just a tremendous uptick in cost, right? So field costs have tripled effectively over the course of maybe 18 months. And then of course, COVID. So we don't know if there's a question out there about what the next 6 or 12 or 18 months of Frisbee in Los Angeles is going to look like and how that would connect with your interest in running for the board. We might not have those answers right now, but the opportunity to participate in the conversation, if we transition away from programming for now during this time of COVID and more into one of, advocacy and sort of social relevance, then that'll just be a continuation of this conversation. So feel free to, converse about that as well, what we might do in lieu of Frisbee.
I guess if anyone has any questions of even if you have even slight interest in what it might mean, if you are what would it mean to be on the board? What would I have to do? Those questions are also welcome. Avalon just asked, all board positions are on a volunteer basis, and yes, all the board members are volunteers. So yeah, we're not getting paid to do any of it. We volunteer for a 2-year term and kind of help figure out what is needed along the way and what we can do to help provide to try and make the load a little lighter. And then I see Sherry's asking what the board positions are. according to our bylaws, which is what most nonprofit bylaws are, we have 5 required positions as far as titles, which are president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and chairperson of the board. Those are just required titles, and then like some responsibilities to go with them. Like obviously the treasurer deals with the money and tracking and taxes and that stuff. That's what I do. The secretary takes all the notes and keeps the community updated with like the posting of the notes. That's their like main responsibility with that title. And I think the other ones are a little more open-ended as far as their specifics. I know that like if Rami, Grant, and Chris want to speak a little more to what their specifics are, but like they're all shaped. But really, we all kind of help each other do everything we need. So there's like a few responsibilities that are really required of the board as far as keeping us running and then trying to help keep the community informed. And we know that there's always more we can do with all of that. And so obviously people who come with experience in those things or just ideas on how to do it. Like I have no experience with like accounting and stuff, but I came in with ideas on how to help us stay more organized. So all of that is open. We're all ultimate players. We're all community members. And so all of those things help in us building the layout.
Yeah, I think Sherry was also asking which positions are open for this election season, which I believe since we have such a large turnover this time, and I think with every election, it was kind of like people got elected to the board in general, and then the people on the board then decide who fills what position from there. So I think it would be pretty open. And I think Avalon, you have your hand up. Did you have a question outside of the chat, or was that just the same?
I had a suggestion or idea. Well, I was just gonna say, like with, I served on the board in Cape Town, and one of the things we struggled with is by having unpaid positions, it automatically sets a barrier for usually BIPOC and other folks. And so that's something that like not everyone has to be paid, but maybe if there was like a thing, I don't know, when you register that's like given extra $5 or whatever, I don't know what it'd be, to help provide a stipend for someone. And then there could be maybe a sliding scale or something that a board member could say like, hey, I need this to put in an extra amount of time or something like that. But that's when I just think about like disproportionately affecting folks. If we want a more diverse community on the board, that's one way to do it. And that's something that we experimented with coaching, is when we wanted more youth coaches, we would try to provide stipend to those who expressed a need, and people could always opt out.
Thank you for bringing that up, Avalon. I think that's a really important point, and something that we as a board want to be open to doing things differently than we've done before. So kind of what Joanna and Christy were describing are the things that we've done currently. And Sherry, to answer your question about time commitment, we have been meeting monthly for about 2 hours each time in person, obviously until now. And then there's work kind of between meetings. And we are open to challenging all of these ideas because traditional board structures and nonprofits are vehicles of white supremacy in the United States. And so we want to be open to doing things differently, to not only creating space, but like changing the space and offering up ideas to change. The board has the ability to change the bylaws with a majority vote. So I think that ideas that you all have and ways that we can continue to change, we are open to. And the election process specifically, we are looking at ways to include folks who haven't traditionally run before for whatever reasons, and to identify barriers that have been existent in the past so that we can change that.
Yeah, I see Josie put in the chat if we could explain what we do, and not just even based on the job description, but any additional tasks that each person takes on. I think my title is technically membership and community outreach, but it's kind of morphed into whatever needs to get done at the time. I think it's kind of like working at a startup or a small business or a small organization where there's a lot of hats and everybody gets to wear them all. Like Joanna handles treasurer position, and I think for more or less like nobody else steps on those toes because that's a scary one. It's not that scary. She does a great job. But like in addition to like helping with social posts or you know, like making sure that emails go out, I also help with the coordinating the getting leagues started, timelines and stuff like that, just because that's something that I'm good at, and project management is like my career. But I think it's kind of whatever anybody can bring to the table and wants to bring to the table. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak up about what they've tackled as their board positions.
Yeah, just to add to that, like we, you know, at these meetings, right, we'll have something come up and we'll be like, all right, who wants to kind of take lead on this? And anyone can kind of step up and do that. And then generally, anytime someone stepped up on something, it still involves usually multiple members either assisting with that task or the whole board having discussions about it while maybe one person creates a document that needs to be created, everyone's looking at it and editing it. So it's pretty collaborative in a lot of ways. And so it's not just like cut and dry. And we're trying to, like Lauren said, I think we're open to being even more different than we are right now in terms of like how we operate. We're not saying like if you join you have to be like this exact specific type of role. We're certainly open to people, especially if you come to the board with like an idea of like, okay, this is kind of like what I want to be in charge of. You know, people are very open to, you know, we're very open to that kind of like go getting and being like, yeah, you want to handle, you know, getting new players into our organization. Great. Like that can be like where you focus your time, but maybe you'd still help with other things. So it's kind of like Christy said, is a great, just to think her example was really good. The startup where it's like everyone kind of does everything. I thought that was a really good way to describe it.
I know like Grant and I have done a lot with setting up leagues and stuff on Ultimate Central and tracking signups and making sure that goes as smoothly. And when inevitably technological problems pop up, I know I usually turn to Grant for a lot of that stuff. But then also with that of like with our membership, getting our membership models set up and figured out, we run the numbers constantly in the background of like, what do we need? What makes sense for people? What can we expect? What is too much to expect of our community? Like this year with asking demographics information so that we can start trying to address some of these things that we've been discussing. Like I have spreadsheets calculating that so that we know and can give you specific information about just what our community looks like, that the percentages of people, ages and all, and races and gender identity, all of those things. Like, so that's something that I know I've taken on too, is gathering information so that we can put it to better use to understand where we could improve. So I mean, those are some other non-defined responsibilities that we've come up with and decided to take on as individuals.
You can also work on other committees, like Christy, Grant, and I are all on the league committee. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like Christy was mentioning, not just the scheduling, but what kind of leagues we're going to be running, what those leagues will look like, how we could possibly introduce new leagues and what those might look like. I know we, and along with the rest of the league committee, which you don't need to be a part of the board to be on, spent some time thinking about like a ranking system to help better evaluate or give an idea of talent for people signing up for leagues. So when we're building hat leagues or when we're doing a draft and we have new captains who don't know anybody, like things to help them out. So that's been some of the work I know we've been doing there.
So, and with all that said, to kind of go back to, I know Sherry had asked a question about time commitment. We had mentioned is that like what we ask of you specifically is 2 hours a month to show up to the meetings. But in reality, it does take a lot of mental time outside. And I mean, there's no specific number I can give you as far as how many hours we put into things. And I think it really depends on how many ideas you have, how much resources you are bringing and can like help with doing other extra projects to help try and make us better. But it does go beyond just those 2 hours a month. But the minimum requirement that we ask of people, that we can give you an exact number, is those 2 hours a month to come to the meetings. But do know that we talk over email with ideas when people come to us and send us questions. Like, those are discussions that we have most days of the week. We are talking to each other on the board about what's going on. So I don't know if anybody else has more specifics they want to.
Yeah, I just want to throw out that there are a lot of really challenging questions. This is pre-COVID and really pre this incredibly meaningful revolution, right? Like, we've been asking and discussing and deciding on things like how to get more beginners involved, how to be an attractive organization, how to diversify, you know, how to not focus on our most outspoken players who play at the elite level, right? How to prioritize people who maybe don't get a lot of playing time, how to balance the fact that we want to be a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization with the fact that we have more men, right, playing, and we're aging up, right? So those questions are really, really tricky. I think those are questions discords all over the world, and certainly all over the country, are asking themselves. We spend a lot of time puzzling over that stuff. You know, the external resources that we have to utilize, that would be like field sites, parks and rec, places where we can actually physically meet when that's allowed. You know, all of the external sort of touchstones that we need to contact, like, there's a lot of lag time there too. So we can't always get immediate responses. There's a fair amount of waiting. We have insurance issues that we're dealing with. This is not meant to be like a list of issues. It's just to say, like, a lot of thought process, a lot of conversations about this stuff, and some waiting goes into it as well. To Joanna's point, there are ongoing conversations via email all the time. So 2 hours a month plus a bunch of email time is probably the summary.
I saw Caitlin asked if there was a time of year that was busier for the board than others, and I was just kind of thinking that it's pretty much the lead up to like our turf league, so a summer and winter when we're trying to get those leagues up and running because they're more sophisticated, and getting the field spaces reserved, and winter league happens right at the end of the year, or starts at the beginning of the year, so there's a lot of stuff happening at the end of the year around the holidays. But in general, yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably the busiest time, is just getting those ones up and running. But we're working on getting processes in place a little bit better so we can start farther in advance. And of course, just as we were trying to get all that stuff figured out, then everything shut down. So it's been hard to plan ahead at this point.
Well, and to an earlier point that Avalon brought up about stipends and making it easier for people to participate. We do have league directors and stuff who help us with a lot of that heavy lifting, and those are paid positions to try and help with that. So if maybe the board doesn't feel like the right space for you, and that it would help to be doing a paid position, like, those are other places too to come talk to us about if maybe right now the board isn't the right place for you. We have other capacities for people to come and help. And then also, if you are interested in the board, know that running those leagues doesn't fall solely on volunteers, that we do have people who we have expectations for and like get compensated for those expectations.
Pepper, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Thanks. Hey. Oh.
Hi. Oh. Are you all unmuting me, muting me?
Okay. No, sorry. Go for it. We can hear you now.
I think that it was brought up earlier about efforts to diversify the board, and just maybe can we touch on efforts that we've done or ways we've done that? what we're looking forward to do?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I was going to reiterate the work that we're doing with both and our consulting organization is specifically to help with the equity efforts of leadership of the board. So they're walking us through, leading us in this election process. And part of the work that they're going to do is not only helping with the election, but then after the new board is elected, working on the strategic plan for the new board going forward, as well as equity training for the new board. So we're looking at really trying to impact the process itself in order to get folks elected onto the board who want to lead the community in a more equitable way. And then to set that new board up with the tools needed in order to strategically plan for the year coming. And that strategic plan includes just kind of what the new board wants the organization to look like and do in the coming year, as well as then making a budget that reflects the new values and incoming desires of the board. Does that answer your question, Skipper?
Yeah, has there been effort to reach out to people of color who are active in the community already as ways to encourage them to apply for board membership or board positions?
Not yet. And we are looking for ways to do that. We're having the BIPOC town hall tomorrow. And Kareen or Kuntz, I don't know if you want to talk about what that may look like as far as specifically talking about reaching out to people participating there in the election process.
I think we might have lost Kareen.
No, they're there.
No.
Kusa, do you want to, or either way, just wanted to check in first before I jumped in?
I guess I could start, and if you want to take the second half. My idea for the BIPOC town hall tomorrow, outside of providing a space for folks, for BIPOC folks to be comfortable in voicing their vision for LAOUT, is to also sort of gauge where they're at in terms of their capacity, because the movement is demanding. It's taxing on the mental bandwidth of BIPOC folks. So there is this balance of, yes, LAOUT is currently not diverse and needs to diversify, and maybe this isn't the moment because folks just don't have the bandwidth. And maybe some folks feel empowered right now to take on positions of power and channel their organizing into that. So it's really, for me, like a temperature check on BIPOC folks and where they're at in terms of their emotions and mental bandwidth.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add other than just to kind of like, this may have been said, but want to like zoom out a little on this process as like these town halls are just getting a temperature check and having some collective space for folks to be able to voice what's on their minds and what their concerns are. And after getting that temperature check, it will be a matter of, okay, based on like the synthesis and analysis of what's been shared, what is this next process around election? Is it do more structures need to be set up in order for a viable election process to take place, and what does that timeline look like? So like those questions around the election process are being answered based on feedback from the community with these town halls. And some of those questions or answers will be around both the election and also being part of LAOUT in general. And so also, right, so you want to include more BIPOC folks, and at the same time you'll have named structural issues that have kept BIPOC folks from being part of that. And so part of the processing is figuring out how to include that in the electoral process, and at the same time with the added layer of COVID. So as folks said before, it is tricky, and right now it's getting a temperature check and getting that feedback from community before LAOUT is able to answer what those questions are. Yeah, and I guess Kunsa was saying, just even hearing from BIPOC folks, like what are some of the things that has kept them from being participatory, and we know that a lot of it is structural, but we don't want to assume or speak for them. So it's the continued conversation and processing right now.
And I guess one more point I want to surface in regards to, I guess, like the need to diversify is that right now, white folks who are allies and like doing their work I would also encourage them to try to step into power if they have more bandwidth to tackle some of that structural stuff. So you're creating an inclusive space that isn't going to just end up harming BIPOC folks when they do enter it.
Anything else around the elections, serving on the board, equitable spaces, anything that we've kind of touched on here briefly? Dawn? Do you have your hand?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'd be interested in serving on the board.
Yay.
Awesome. I'm going to put that in writing.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
It's recorded, right? So
It's recorded, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Can you tell we don't get a lot of volunteers often?
Okay, y'all, we are going to transition to kind of one last piece of our discussion, but then I think we'll have time at the end to open it up for anything else you have questions, suggestions, comments about. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Yeah, so for the last kind of big theme we wanted to discuss was just wanted to see where everyone is at in terms of, we know how we feel about returning to play, and we wanted to hear more about, from some of you, what would you like to see us kind of taking into consideration in terms of, when we should be as like a LAOUT organization kind of opening things up to participation again, or just like what are people's thoughts on like what level of safety measures people want to see us taking, things like that, and just get some feedback. If you want to just share some thoughts on return to play in general, that's fine too, but just kind of a discussion about when you would like to see us move forward with that and things like that.
sorry. So specifically, we're looking for suggestions to type in the chat box
That's
about
right. Sorry, that's what you're doing.
when we're allowed to play again. So we're not talking anything timeline wise about when that may be, but what do you want the likely new board to consider as far as safety measures go? What suggestions do you have for safe play? And if you could type them and put them in the chat box, then we'll engage there. Sherry says she'd like to see Fall League happen. JV suggested setting up a mailing list for organizers of pickup games so that folks know what guidelines LAOUT is recommending to be followed. Great.
I think it would be remiss to not minimally mention that there's an aspect of equity we need to consider when we talk about return to play. You know, I don't know that that's any one person's responsibility to consider necessarily, but we know that because Black and Brown people have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, we know that they will be disproportionately impacted as we return to things like recreational sports. And that extends from a history of there being, you know, less inclusivity in Frisbee specifically. So keeping that in mind, you know, I will say this, not as a LAOUT board member, but as Rami. I believe that until it is risk-free for everybody to play, it's inequitable for anybody to play. Now, my fellow board members may not agree. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. This is a national opinion I have nationally. And I just think we need to keep that in mind. Because keep in mind, if you have a pickup game, are you going to tell someone who just traveled that they're not welcome? What if they have to travel for work, right? Are you going to tell somebody who, you know, is driving in from a different area that they're not welcome? Like, there's a lot of logistical concerns that I feel could lead to some equity concerns. So, yeah, to Don's point, you know, he says, I don't feel it's appropriate to start playing again until there's a clear treatment for COVID. And I would say, yeah, a vaccine or a therapy. Dr. Fauci said that it sounds like there's some, you know, progress being made. But keep in mind that once there's a vaccine, there's going to be access issues to that vaccine, right? So even once that's available to first line, you know, to healthcare providers and stuff, like, that doesn't mean that that we're going to be able to like get a shot and play Frisbee again.
Hoover's echoing that in the chat, that until there's a clear and affordable treatment, that it's not equitable to play.
And USAU is furloughed largely, so just keeping in mind that nationally there's not going to be programming either.
Sherry mentioned that there really is nothing considered risk-free. There is minimal risk. Sherry, did you want to expand on that as far as it relates to playing Frisbee?
Yeah, no, just in general. I don't know if a lot of you guys know this. I am a nurse practitioner. I am specialized in family practice. So from my understanding, as far as how I treat COVID with my patients in an outpatient setting, there is no such thing as risk-free. There's just absolutely no way. Just like there's no such thing as safe sex. There's safer sex practices. There's safer sex, I guess, safety-wise, as far as contracting and preventing the spread of COVID-19. So as far as like, I do agree with all of you in saying that there is an equity issue as far as finding treatments, being able to get the vaccines out to the masses within a reasonable cost for everybody. And again, you know, we can't force vaccines on people. There are people out there that aren't going to do it no matter what. Do we tell them, no, you can't play with us? That's also an issue too that we have to put into place. But I do believe that there is a bright side coming up over the hill. As far as my understanding with my contacts at the DoD, there is a vaccine in place. It is in phase 3 clinical trials of the FDA trials. That means there's one more hurdle to jump over before it becomes available to the masses as a whole. So I guess what I want to say is, like, how do we as a community help speed along this vaccine, this possible treatment for COVID together? Because there's a lot of us here and all of us come from different types of professional backgrounds. How do we work together to get this to move forward? Because I think we can, and I think we can see return to play a lot sooner than people have in their minds.
Thanks, Sherry. And I think, yeah, to your point with getting a vaccine out, equity is the single issue, because we know that like over 5 million children worldwide die from a lack of clean water. That doesn't have anything to do with a vaccine or a disease. It's literally clean water. And there is no other reason besides equity that happens. So if we want to advocate for return to play in an equitable way, we have to ensure that if and when this vaccine does come out, that it is equitably distributed to everybody who needs it. And in the healthcare system in the United States, historically and systematically neglects Black people and people of color. So that's where the focus needs to be when we're talking about equitable return to play.
This is Corinne. I want to offer a reframing of return to play, as folks talk a lot about and acknowledging that even before COVID, there were like major inequities in Ultimate. Now with COVID, there's an extra layer of inequity. And so when you think about returning to play and you want to ensure as many people as possible and the most marginalized players as possible are able to return to play, how are you, LAOUT, going to create those conditions, and how are you going to support one another? Is that restructuring the board, getting money for volunteers, picking people up to and from games, ensuring that everybody has access to the vaccine if when it comes out, or testing centers and whatnot. And so wanting to move people to think of this as a collective effort in LAOUT. How are you going to take care of LAOUT so that when return to play happens, you have some systems in place? And that you've also been working on this at a very collective level as LAOUT. So how are you working together and taking care of your least marginalized players so that when return to play does happen, you're not back in this same seat of asking these questions again and again? And also adding, I asked the board in one of the last meetings, I said, to clarify, you all can't get on the field right now, right? And everyone said, right, we can't get on the field. So if you could get on the field, I asked, would you get on the field? And most everyone was like, yeah, absolutely. But we know at this time, however many hours you would have spent on the field, driving to a game, et cetera, whether that's 5 to 10 hours a week. My question, as we are thinking about equity, as we are thinking about Black people being killed by police, as we are thinking about COVID killing the Latinx and Black and Indigenous populations in LA, what are you as LAOUT doing as a community in those 5 to 10 hours that aren't being dedicated to play right now? And offering that 5 to 10 hours to play, or however amount it is can go back to building these structures that you are hoping for, whether it is advocating for defunding the police, or whether it is like building relationships and checking in on BIPOC members and having conversations, whether it is taking an hour each week to be part of a learning or reading group or a processing group, whatever it is. How are you reinvesting that time on the field that is not happening towards equity and towards these concerns around COVID and Black people being killed?
I feel like something that we can all do sort of individually is really encourage others not to play right now. It doesn't take any time. You know, if you hear about games, just remind them that that's privilege. That's access to healthcare. That's access to resources that not everyone has right now. Don, you had something?
Yeah, it was my understanding for this meeting, like that, the whole purpose of it was to get those objectives to move on to the future of LAOUT. So, I mean, do we have, from the talk today, what objectives have we come up with, I guess, like listed from leaving this meeting? I know we talked about, like what Rami said, like avidly, like telling people to not go out and play, and then also maybe sending out those resources for people to get involved in some kind of way in our community as well. But maybe starting to like talk about how we can get those resources or organize those resources in one place, as opposed to giving it the responsibility to one person to find all those resources to give out to our community. I would suggest maybe like a Google Doc or a spreadsheet, maybe like a mini database for us all to start maybe placing that information into, if you want to start organizing in that kind of way.
Thanks, Don. Hoover, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think to Don's question, and what Karina said, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, I know we organized Eastside Mini and we met once a week to play Frisbee before all this was happening. And you know, that group me has been very quiet now. And I think it's a good opportunity to reach out to that group and maybe do a once a week, or, I mean, we met once a week. So like, I know people are free around those times, like just to like get in a Zoom call and just talk about some of these things and what we've been reading. And I think that's what I've been kind of missing in my community. Just because of coronavirus, I haven't seen a lot of people. So just, yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do after this, is reach out to my East Side group me friends and see what conversations we could start together.
That's awesome, Hoover.
Yeah, I actually thought about that before with like the women's pickup, when that was like one of the first things I think that got canceled, or actually maybe that the last one happened, but I just remember like seeing the Facebook events come up and being like, oh, nobody canceled the Facebook event, but obviously nobody's going, and thinking like maybe we should set up a Zoom for the same time. But yeah, maybe we can do more pickup Zooms of just hanging out and discussing other things. Like, I think that I like Don's idea of the a Google sheet to consolidate everybody's resources, and then maybe even we can have a couple people go through and kind of look through some of the stuff and maybe highlight one or two every week, so that, because I know like there's, you know, like that a list of 75 things that white people can do to be anti-racist, and like there's so much information out there that I find it overwhelming too. Like I have a lot of lists of things to look at and it's like too much. So I think maybe if we can just focus on like 1 or 2 things a week, maybe that would help too, to like kind of break it down. And even if it's like we talked about the book club before, or like maybe like the new Zoom pickup mini games or whatever turns into like hey, read an article that's, you know, like will take you 10 minutes and then we can all talk about it or something.
Dawn, to specifically answer your question about kind of what's next and what's coming out of this meeting, as I look at the time, it's 11:30 and want to start wrapping up. We can stay on for folks who want to stay, but just as a reminder, the BIPOC town hall is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Yep, 5 p.m. That's going to be led by Karine and Kunsa. And so after both of these town halls, the board is going to reconvene with Karine and Kunsa to talk about how they went and the next steps out of them and decide what our next steps are. We will also be sending out a second survey to the entire community and would love y'all's help in getting more and more folks to fill that out as part of the election process, to kind of dig deeper into some of the process itself with the elections. So those things are coming, and we are, along with all of the awesome suggestions today for being and remaining active, we'll follow up on those. And then the board is continuing to move forward with the election process. And we will keep in touch with you about that as well. So I'm gonna really quickly, Caitlin said that Surge, which is showing up for racial justice, has offered lunchtime action drives for those. She put that in the chat, information there. And Avalon said maybe LAOUT could share resources about how building a relationship with a park/facility can be established or started, if that's something we want community members doing. Just thinking while a lot of folks are staying home and or walking in their local parks versus driving to places, and getting involved with local politics could be a way to build relationships and play ultimate. Maybe there isn't much relationship building done before and it's all over email, but just a thought. Thank you. Avalon and Hoover echoed that idea. Plant those seeds early, Jacob. I love that idea. So yes, thank you, Avalon. We'll include that in our first email that goes out to the community. So thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming to this and for participating and asking questions and giving your awesome suggestions. We will absolutely be in touch. I will open up the floor now for anybody who has any other questions, suggestions, parting thoughts. And for those of you who do need to leave because we're at an hour and a half, we thank you. Just thank you for coming and thank you for participating.
I actually had one question for everybody, going back to like the board election process. Since we have, you know, like 42 people in this room, I mean, about 10 of which are on the board already, but I know like Don said that he was interested in joining and or like running, and it's not like I want people to say anything or like speak up right now, but I'm just curious, like obviously you people are interested in what's going on, you're not apathetic to things. I'm curious what makes you not interested in running for the board, if it's just like intimidation of not knowing what it is, it's not having enough time commitment, just not wanting to take on any more responsibilities. Like I'm just wondering, because like when I first got on the board, like I remember, you know, like January of last year, I think it was, when they were sending out the letters being like, we need people to apply and fill positions. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. I'm a little bit interested, but I sat back and waited and didn't really do anything about it because I thought it was kind of scary and I didn't know what it meant to be on the board, and didn't want to become responsible for something that everybody would start being upset about later if something went wrong. But then like after a couple months of me like thinking about it and still not doing anything, Joanna had brought up, like, I was at one of the league committee meetings and she was just like, everybody here should apply. She's like, you should do it. And like that little nudge helped me. And now that I've been on the board, I see that it's like, it is work, but it's not as scary as I thought it would be. Like, we're all just trying to make this, make the leagues run for everyone and make sure that everybody has a good time. And it's definitely challenging, but I think if you have like an inkling of wanting to do it, that you should try.
Yeah, there's really no substitution for, I believe, for like personal sort of satisfaction than being in service. Then, you know, whether it's in service to the Frisbee community or in service to people, you know, outside of our community, I really think that the reward is worth it. And Sherry just posted some time concerns, which we totally understand and we totally get. I mean, listen, not everybody makes every meeting, right? The key is communication. If you're pretty sure that you can never make a meeting on a Monday night, email us anyway, because meetings don't have to be on Mondays. And you know, we can talk about that. But yeah, we do meetings. The meeting that we do is once a month on a Monday night historically, but like I said, that could change. So there's flexibility.
Yeah, and perhaps we come up with a list of people who say like they're interested in doing things but don't have a solid time commitment that they can put in, and we have you know, like a volunteer pool that we can say like, hey, we need help doing this one thing over the next month. Who can step up this time? Maybe that's just a new resource that we can put together so that people don't have to feel like they have to do everything, but can step up when they're available.
And Judge just mentioned that location and time of meetings are hard. And as you can probably guess, the board since March has been meeting over Zoom. So virtual meetings and reimagining the way that the board meets is all on the table. Hoover is interested in being a part of the volunteer pool. Thanks, Hoover. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, chat with us. Anything is open.
Do you have an idea of when you're going to hold elections again?
Sometime between now and October. Our goal is to get the board in place with enough time between kind of the fall and end of the year to get trained, work on strategic plan, and draft and then implement a new budget. Our budgets go on calendar years, so the new budget would start in January. So the goal is to leave enough time to be able to do that for the new board. Nate said it might help to distribute information on board responsibilities, since I'm sure with COVID, those responsibilities have changed. Yeah, we can include that in some of the election communication that goes out and summarizing what the board has done until now. And to reiterate, we're also looking at, you know, kind of along with traditional responsibilities, looking at how we can reimagine board seats as well. Okay, everyone, stay safe, wear your mask, Black Lives Matter. Let's keep fighting for a better world. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, and thank you to both and for your help today, Karine and Kunsa specifically. We appreciate you. Good work, y'all.
Yeah, that was great.
Really good.